Coverage you can count on. KOMU 8 News starts now.
The Delta variant is spreading across the state, and a Columbia Teachers Union is pushing for schools to mask up. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jordan Berger. Thanks so much for joining us today. The Columbia Missouri National Education Association released suggested mask guidelines for the next school year, but the Columbia Public School District wants to clarify no decision has been made. KOMU 8's Alex Fulton is in the newsroom with a look at both sides. Alex?
Jordan, those recommendations would affect every individual inside CPS facilities for the 2021-2022 school year. At this time, the guidance is just a recommendation for the board to consider. It's not a rule yet. Currently, CPS is requiring masks for students 11 years and younger for summer school. The CMNEA president said her organization saw the negative effect not wearing masks can have. She said the guidance came after cases were up and students had to quarantine earlier this summer. Now that masks are back, she thinks students and staff will be more protected from COVID.
It's safest for people to be masked in schools, mainly to protect the ones who are unvaccinated, and that would be the elementary students. But we are not limiting it to elementary schools because there are teachers who have children who are in the public schools.
We also received the following statement from Michelle Baumstark on behalf of CPS. The district received the document containing the CMNEA recommendations on Monday. The document is not the district's plan. The document represents recommendations from the teachers union. The district will have more information for families before the school year begins in August. The CMNEA president also clarified that the recommendation could change if vaccines are approved for children under 12. If that were to happen, the requirement would no longer be needed 6 weeks after the vaccine approval. That's to allow children the 2-week waiting period after their second dose. In the newsroom, Alex Fulton, KOMU 8 News.
Thanks, Alex. Today, the Department of Health and Senior Services held a news conference to explain the new vaccine incentive program. They wanted to clear up any confusion residents had about who's eligible. Now, residents are enrolled into one of 3 tiers. Red tier residents are 18 and up and received their first dose of the vaccine on or after July 21st. White tier residents are 18 and up but received their first dose before July 21st. And blue tier residents are between the ages of 12 and 17 and received a first dose at any time. One DHSS official says this program is more than just about money.
I think everyone who gets vaccinated during the duration of this program is a winner, whether they get a prize or not, because this vaccine will allow them to live their lives more confidently, more normally, to know that they're protecting themselves.
More than 100,000 people enrolled in the program within the first day. For a link of where to enroll, visit KOMU.com. The State Chamber of Commerce has launched a campaign encouraging businesses to have a high employee vaccination rate. It's called the COVID Stops Here campaign. The Columbia Chamber of Commerce has co-signed on the effort, saying employee vaccinations are good for business. Local leaders say vaccinations will help the economic recovery. It allows businesses to operate in person safely the way business was conducted before the pandemic.
Being able to go to meetings, being able to do those group activities that they do, the different parts of that, and a lot of that has to deal with why that's important and why we encourage our businesses to make sure they're encouraging their employees to go out and get their vaccination.
To learn more about the COVID Stops Here campaign, head to KOMU.com. In the meantime, a surge of COVID cases in Iowa. Now, updated numbers from the Iowa Department of Public Health show nearly 1,400 Iowans were diagnosed with COVID-19 in the past week. NBC's Kaylin Thompson has more.
At the height of the pandemic, Unity Point Health had 140 COVID patients. Right now, that number is in the single digits across its 4 hospitals. But doctors know how quickly that can change.
It takes about 2 weeks after cases start to increase before we see the hospitalizations increase. So we're watching that very carefully and knowing that we are already very tight, and we're getting calls from Missouri to transfer patients here because they have no beds left and no ICU beds left in Missouri.
But that doesn't mean beds are empty here in Des Moines. Metro hospitals have been busy caring for patients with illnesses typically seen in the winter months.
The pediatric side, lots and lots of RSV and pneumonia. Adult side as well, respiratory illness, plus all of our chronic illnesses that didn't have as much care during our COVID pandemic.
If more COVID patients are added to the mix, Another challenge across the board will be finding the people to care for them.
Currently, staffing for most hospitals in Metro for nursing, OR staff, we are short of the staff. So that would be a worry in future if the COVID patients continue to increase.
Doctors are saying the best defense against the Delta variant and surge in hospitalizations is the vaccine. But with vaccination rates still lagging in the state, healthcare leaders are bracing themselves for what could be.
What's worst case scenario?
We may find out. We do the best we can with what we have and work with our community. I'm in constant contact or in frequent contact with other medical directors and CMOs throughout the community, trying to figure out how do we safely care for these patients.
That's Kaylin Thompson reporting there. New research suggests that 2 vaccines are effective against the Delta variant. Researchers found 2 shots of the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines were 88% effective against asymptomatic disease caused by the Delta variant. The study confirmed earlier data that was released by Public Health England in late May. Experts also say the effectiveness was a lot lower against the Delta variant following only 1 shot.
Temperatures are heating up across central Missouri, and that's going to continue to happen over the next few days. Let's go ahead and look at our currents all across the region. 88 in Montgomery City, 84 in Vandalia, 89 in Jefferson City, 87 here in Eldon, 84 in Versailles. But when we factor in the humidity, that's where we feel like the lower 90s, exactly where we were expecting to be for this afternoon. Heat index currently of 90 in Fulton, 91 in Jefferson City, and 87 in Boonville. As we go through the evening hours, we're going to continue to see those values right around 90 degrees. Tomorrow, we see that number climb. We're going to feel like the middle 90s. But look what happens into Saturday. Triple-digit heat indices on the map. I think we see this through the weekend and through a good chunk of next week, too. We'll talk more about that coming up.
All right, Matt, thanks. Here's what's happening right now. Crews in the western part of the U.S. are continuing to fight wildfires, and better weather is helping. Authorities say lower winds and higher humidity overnight allowed crews to improve those fire lines. Fire is also approaching an area that was already burned by a previous fire on its southeastern flank. Now, this is bringing hope that it could slow the fire spread. This morning, Missouri head football coach Eli Drinkwitz and 2 of his players took the stage for the final day of SEC Media Days. KMUA's Lauren Michelson is live from Hoover, Alabama with updates on what the coach said today. Lauren?
Jordan, today was filled with a lot of talk that had to do with things outside of the football field. And all week, we've heard a lot of talk about COVID-19 vaccinations with a lot of confusing and differing concepts from SEC coaches. But Coach Drinkwitz said that his staff is about 95% vaccinated. But as for the players, well, he's ultimately leaving it up to them.
And I don't demand it from our players. I demand from them they be transparent about who they are, and if they don't want to get a vaccine, then they have to be. We have to enforce the meet, greet, and eat rules and make sure that they protect the team.
Although Drinkwitz is allowing the players to make that decision for themselves, he said they are trending in the right direction. He said they are entering that threshold of 85% vaccination efforts that can keep them from having to wear facial masks and having to do lots of COVID-19 testing on the regular. Although he is really passionate about getting the COVID-19 vaccination, he said earlier that it's what we need to do to protect our neighbor. Reporting live in Hoover, Alabama, Lauren Michelson, KMUA News.
All right, Lauren, thank you. The Missouri Supreme Court has overturned a lower court's decision in the state's Medicaid expansion case. The court agreed that the voter-approved plan to offer Medicaid to more people should stand. The ruling said the 2020 ballot measure approving the expansion of Medicaid did not violate the Missouri Constitution. The case is now heading back to Cole County Circuit Court after the state Supreme Court's unanimous decision. Missouri will receive up to $500 million in the settlement between several states and opioid manufacturers as well as distributors. To receive the full amount of money, counties and cities will have to sign on to the settlement for the state. The state's portion of the settlement will go toward an opioid abatement and treatment fund. The funds will also be used to fund existing programs like prevention, education, and treatment programs. Coming up, the SAFE Act in Arkansas, what a federal judge ruled about treatments for transgender youth. Plus, from Sedalia to Vandalia, why kids across the country are coming to Mid-Missouri.
And temperatures holding in the 80s through about 10 o'clock tonight. Then it's a 70s kind of night. Temperatures going to be staying warm in those 70s pretty much for the next 8 to 10 days. More details on that coming up.
But first, you're looking live over the Columbia Regional Airport. The time is 5:09. This is KOMU 8 News at 5, coverage you can count on.